My name is Agnes Periwinkle, and I am 82 years old. For 62 of those years, I was married to Walter. We built a life in Oak Haven, Ohio, in a small house with a porch swing and a rose garden I tended with my own hands. We had our son, Daniel, who moved to Arizona, and then, late in life, we had our miracle, our daughter, Clara. She was 38, a gentle, quiet soul who still lived with us. She was my world. Walter, he was my rock. Or so I believed. He was the one who handled the difficult things. He was the one who, for the last 10 years, would take Clara on her art retreats to the countryside. For her anxiety, Agnes, he'd say, patting my hand. The fresh air does her good. I'd wave from the porch as he smiled, his arm around our daughter, helping her into the car. I never knew that as he smiled at me, our daughter carried a monstrous secret. 5 times, she left for a retreat. 5 times, she returned, paler and thinner, while I chalked it up to a sensitive stomach. 5 pregnancies. 5 children I never knew existed. My discovery didn't happen with a whisper. It happened with a crash. I was looking for our old pension papers in Walter's locked desk, a place I was never supposed to go. The key was hidden under his blotter. Inside, beneath files of old taxes, was a hardbound black ledger. It wasn't for his carpentry business. The first page was dated 10 years ago. The entry was chillingly simple, C1, Clearstream Adoptions. $50,000. I turned the page. 2 years later, C2, Clearstream Adoptions. $50,000. My breath hitched. I turned again, and again, and again. C3. C4. C5. $250,000. The dates next to each entry lined up perfectly with Clara's art retreats. My gnarled hands were trembling so hard I dropped the book. The man who slept beside me, the man who kissed my cheek every morning, hadn't just lied to me. He had sold them. He had sold my daughter's children. My whole world shattered in that single moment. I put the ledger back. I locked the desk. I crept back to my bed and lay beside the monster I had married, my heart a block of ice in my chest. I did not sleep. The next morning, Walter went to his VFW breakfast, just like every Tuesday. He kissed my cheek. "Be a good girl, Aggie," he said. The moment his car was gone, I went to Clara's room. It was still the room of a teenager, with pale pink walls and stuffed animals. I looked, really looked, for the first time in years. I saw the loose sweaters in her closet. I saw the bottles of folic acid tucked in a drawer, which she'd told me were for thinning hair. My hand went to the stomach flu she had every winter. It wasn't flu. It was morning sickness. I was a fool. An old, blind fool. I knelt, my old bones creaking, and looked under her mattress. Tucked deep in the springs was a small, worn sketchpad. Not her usual landscapes. I opened it. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a scream. Page 1, a tiny, sleeping face, drawn with heartbreaking love and detail. Beneath it, in Clara's handwriting, Linus. Born January 2010. Gone January 2010. I turned the page. Another face. Ilara. Born December 2011. Gone December 2011. I went through all 5. Linus, Ilara, Ren, Samuel, and Hope. She had named them. She had memorized their faces. These were not just pregnancies. These were her children. But one question burned in my mind, a question so vile I could barely form the thought. Who was the father? Clara never dated. She never left the house. My eyes went from the sketches to the hallway, toward the room where I slept. And I knew. I knew as surely as I knew my own name. Walter. The truth was a monster, and it was living in my house. I was sitting in the kitchen, the sketches and the ledger open on the table, when Clara came downstairs. She saw what I was holding, and her face, already so pale, turned the color of ash. She didn't try to lie. Her legs gave out, and she slid to the floor, a sound leaving her throat that was not a cry, but a hollow, animal wail. "You found them," she whispered. I knelt in front of her, my body aching with arthritis and sorrow. "Clara," I said, my voice breaking. "Who? How?" Her eyes were vacant, like a doll's. "Daddy. Daddy said it was the only way, Mom." "What way?" I shook her, gently. "What way, Clara?" "He said you were sick," she sobbed, the words tumbling out. "He told me your pension was gone, that you had early-onset Alzheimer's, and the nursing home was going to take the house. He said we'd be homeless." It was a lie. All of it. My mind was sharp. Our pension was fine. He had isolated her. He had poisoned her against me. But Clara, him? I whispered the word I couldn't say. "Why him?" She flinched, pulling her knees to her chest. "He said it had to be our secret. To keep the line pure. He said it was a sacrifice for the family. He said it was my job." The words were his. The monster had been speaking through her for a decade. And I, her mother, had been deaf. He had poisoned our daughter's mind and used her body to build a lie. My blood turned to ice. He came home at noon, whistling. He walked into the kitchen, saw me on the floor holding a sobbing Clara, and saw the ledger on the table. The smile did not fade. It just changed. The bumbling, kindly grandfather I knew vanished. The man who stood before me was cold. Calculating. "Agnes," he said, his voice flat. "You were not supposed to find that." There was no remorse. No panic. You raped our daughter," I whispered, the word tasting like poison. 5 times. Walter laughed. A short, sharp bark. "Don't be dramatic, Agnes. It was an agreement. She's weak. I gave her purpose. I secured our future." He gestured around the kitchen, at our nice refrigerator, the new car in the driveway. "Where did you think this came from? Your Social Security? Those people paid a fortune for healthy, clean children. We are rich, Agnes." He truly believed he had done nothing wrong. He looked at Clara, still weeping on the floor, with nothing but contempt. She was a resource. It's time you understood that. I realized I had never known this man. I had been married to a stranger for 62 years. He wasn't just a monster. He was a businessman. And his business was my daughter. His true face was revealed, and it was more terrible than any nightmare. I was a prisoner. That night, I realized the full extent of it. Walter took my phone. "You're upset, dear. You need to rest." He took my car keys. "You're too old to be driving in your state." He was insulating us. He was in complete control. Clara was a ghost, a shell of a person, rocking in her room, humming the lullabies she must have sung to the babies she never kept. Walter was calm. He knew I was an 82-year-old woman with arthritis and no resources. What could I do? He had underestimated me. He forgot that I was a mother. I waited until he was in the shower. I used the old rotary phone in the hallway, the one he forgot about. I dialed the only number I knew by heart, my son, Daniel, in Arizona. I knew Walter sometimes listened in. I had to be smart. "Daniel, honey," I said, my voice quavering just enough. "It's Mom. I'm worried about the rose bushes here." "The roses, Mom?" Daniel asked, confused. Yes, I said, my eyes darting to the bathroom door. The aphid problem is just terrible. Walter, he can't seem to handle it. It's worse than I've ever seen. I need you to come. And bring the strong stuff you used last time. The really strong stuff. There was a pause. Daniel knew I loved my roses, but he also knew I'd never call him for bugs. Rose bushes was our old code for Clara. Aphid was the pest. Mom. I'm on the next flight, he said, his voice low and urgent. I'll be there in the morning. I had one night to survive, locked in a house with the man who had destroyed our family. That night, Walter tried to lock me in my room. For your own safety, Aggie. You're not yourself. I saw the small slide bolt he had installed on the outside of my door. The casual cruelty of it. He was locking me away so he could control Clara. I heard him go to her room. I heard him jiggle her doorknob. Clara, sweetheart, he cooed. Daddy just needs to talk to you. I heard Clara scream, no. Please, no. Not again. I beat on my door with my frail fists. Walter, you leave her alone. You monster. I was screaming, crying, helpless. And then, I heard a crash. Not my door, but the front door of the house. It splintered off its hinges. Get away from her door. It was Daniel's voice, booming with a rage I had never heard. He had driven straight from the airport, a 6-hour drive, in 4. He hadn't waited for morning. My son, 6 feet 2 inches and built like the linebacker he used to be, stood in the hallway. He saw Walter, frozen by Clara's door. He saw me, locked in my room. Dad, Daniel said, his voice shaking with fury. What did you do? Walter's face crumpled, but not in remorse. In anger. My own son. Turning on me. This is what your mother's senile delusions have done. My son was here. The tables were about to turn. Daniel kicked open my door. I ran out and grabbed his arm. The ledger, Daniel. In his desk. The sketches, under Clara's bed. Walter lunged at me. You old witch. You've ruined everything. Daniel shoved him. It wasn't a hard push, but Walter was old and off balance. He stumbled and fell, a pathetic, weak old man, finally powerless. While he sputtered on the carpet, Daniel went into the office and came out with the black ledger. He opened it. He saw the C1, C2, C3 entries. He saw the dates. He looked at Clara, who was now peeking from her doorway, pale and thin. The math clicked in his head. His face went from red anger to a sickening, pale white. Oh my God, Daniel whispered. Dad, these are Clara's. No. 5 of them, I said, my voice like steel. He sold them. Daniel looked at his father on the floor. And you're the... He couldn't say it. He didn't have to. Daniel pulled out his phone. Walter scrambled to his feet. You call anyone, boy, and I'll tell them she's crazy. I'll tell them you're crazy. I'll ruin you. Daniel didn't even look at him. He just spoke into the phone. Yes, I need police and an ambulance at 124 Primrose Lane. My father has been. God, he's been raping my sister for 10 years. The silence that followed was broken only by Walter's sudden, sharp sob. Not of guilt. Of defeat. The secret was finally out, spoken into the light. The sirens were on their way. The flashing lights painted our quiet street red and blue. The 2 young police officers who arrived looked confused. They saw me, an 82-year-old grandmother. They saw Clara, a 38-year-old woman weeping in the corner. And they saw Walter, an 83-year-old man, a veteran, sitting on his couch, calmly telling them we were all insane. She's senile, officers. And my son is unstable. My daughter is mentally ill. I've been their caretaker for years. It's a terrible burden. But the ledger told a different story. The sketches told a different story. The lock on the outside of my door told a different story. They took Walter away. He didn't fight. He just looked at me as they cuffed him. You'll regret this, Agnes. You've destroyed this family. An ambulance took Clara to the hospital. I went with her. The emergency room doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, listened to our story in a private room. She examined Clara. When she came back, her face was grim. Agnes, she said softly. The physical trauma, the repeated, forced pregnancies, her body is under immense strain. It's a miracle she survived the last one. She looked at me. Clara is going to need a lot of help. We're admitting her. Meanwhile, Daniel was already on the phone with a lawyer. Clearstream Adoptions, he said, pacing the hallway. It's a fraudulent agency. We need to find them. We need to find my siblings. The words sounded alien. Walter was gone, but the nightmare was just beginning. Now we had to find the children. The legal battle was a new kind of hell. Clearstream Adoptions was a ghost, a shell company Walter had created to launder the money and forge the papers. The adoptions were all closed. Sealed. But they were built on a foundation of fraud and rape. Our lawyer was a bulldog. He argued that every document was void. After 3 agonizing months, he got a breakthrough. He found the first child. Linus. His name was Thomas now. He was 15, living in a suburb of Cleveland. The adoptive parents were good people. They were told his mother was a young, drug-addicted runaway who had died in childbirth. We arranged a meeting in a sterile lawyer's office. I held Clara's trembling hand. A tall boy walked in. He had Clara's dark, curly hair and her shy smile. But he had Walter's eyes. I felt sick. Clara couldn't speak. She just reached into her bag and pulled out the small, worn sketchpad. She handed it to him, open to the first page. The drawing of the sleeping baby. The boy, Thomas, looked at the sketch. He looked at Clara, who was silently crying. He didn't understand the whole story, not the monstrous parts. He just saw a woman who had mourned him for 15 years. My name is Thomas, he said, his voice quiet. But I like Linus. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't a reunion. It was just a beginning. A fragile, terrifying, possible beginning. We found one. Only 4 more to go. This journey is so far from over. Walter was found competent to stand trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The ledger. Clara's testimony. And the DNA, which proved he was the father of Linus. He will die in prison. It's not justice. Justice would be turning back time. It's not revenge. It's just an end. I sold the house in Oakhaven. The blood money from the sale, and every penny Walter had hidden, I put into a trust fund. It's for them. For Linus, and for Alara, Ren, Samuel, and Hope, wherever they are. We will keep looking. Daniel moved me and Clara to Arizona to live with him and his family. We have a small, beautiful guest house with a porch. I'm 83 now. Clara is 39. She's in therapy, deep, intensive therapy, 3 times a week. She's started to paint again. Not faces. She paints the desert sunset, all bright, burning oranges and purples. She's teaching my grandchildren how to draw. My hands are still gnarled with arthritis, but they are busy. I'm planting a new garden in the desert. It's hard to make things grow here, but I am stubborn. I'm planting roses. I sit on the porch and watch Clara. We don't talk about before. We talk about today. About the color of the sky. About what's for dinner. We are not healed. I don't think we ever will be. But as I watch my daughter paint a new, bright world, I know we are not just survivors. We are still here. And for now, that is everything. Thank you for walking with me through the darkest story of my life. The world is full of shadows, but it is also full of people who will fight for the light, like my son, Daniel, and like all of you who have listened. If my story has touched you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear that they are not alone. And please, subscribe for more stories of survival and strength.